If you've always felt you're fundamentally different from your siblings, not just in personality or interests, but at soul level, as if you operate in completely distinct dimensions, there's a deep spiritual reason for this difference that will shock you by its clarity and radicalness. Why do you question everything while they automatically accept family patterns? Why do you feel the weight of generational responsibility they don't even recognize exists? Why were you marked as the misunderstood black sheep while they receive family approval denied to you? The answer isn't coincidence, isn't common psychological dynamic, and definitely isn't because something's wrong with you. It's because God chose you within your family for specific purpose your siblings weren't designated to fulfill. Here's the truth that will completely reorganize how you see your position in the family. There's spiritual hierarchy established before the foundation of the world where God designates different roles within the same family lineage. Just as he chose Jacob and not Esau, Joseph and not his 10 brothers, David and not his 7 apparently more qualified brothers. He chose you among your siblings not by arbitrary favoritism, but for specific generational purpose requiring someone willing to be different, isolated, misunderstood if necessary to break curses they'll continue perpetuating. Your siblings weren't rejected, they have different functions. But you were separated to be cycle breaker, new legacy creator, family trajectory transformer. And this mission comes at the price of family isolation that completely explains why you never fit in. In the next few minutes, we're going to dive into the specific reasons why God chose you instead of your siblings. We'll explore the spiritual hierarchy operating in families independent of human logic. We'll reveal the generational purpose justifying your difference. And most importantly, we'll equip you to embrace chosen identity without guilt for being black sheep, without envy of approval siblings receive, and without trying anymore to force the fit that was never designated to happen. If you're tired of feeling different without understanding why, if you carry guilt for not being close to siblings as you should, if you question why God separated you so radically within your own family, prepare yourself, because this truth will validate your experience and free you to finally honor the calling that explains all the painful difference you've experienced all along. The question haunting many chosen ones within families is this: why me and not my siblings? You grew up in the same house, ate the same food, had the same parents, but you're radically different spiritually while they seem completely oblivious to divine purpose, spiritual consciousness, or any holy restlessness keeping you awake at night. It's not moral superiority or personal merit that separated you from them. It's spiritual hierarchy established before the foundation of the world, where God designates specific roles within family lineages. Just as he chose Jacob and not Esau, Joseph and not his older brothers, David and not his 7 brothers, he chose you within your family for reasons that have everything to do with generational purpose and nothing to do with arbitrary favoritism. This divine choice didn't happen because you were holier, more obedient, or more deserving than your siblings. Often it's exactly the opposite, where the chosen one goes through more struggles, more questioning, more refining pain than siblings who live apparently easier and conforming lives. God chooses based on divine purpose he saw in you before you were born, not on performance you demonstrate after. He identified specific capacity to carry weight of generational mission, recognized willingness, though unconscious, to be different even when it costs family acceptance, and most importantly, saw you had exactly the type of soul that could be broken, refined, and remodeled to fulfill what siblings with less malleable spirits could never accomplish. And here's the truth that hurts, but liberates. Your siblings weren't rejected by God. They simply have different roles in spiritual economy. While you were chosen to break generational curses, they may be fulfilling functions of continuity, stability, or even contrast that highlights your difference even more. It's not about who God loves more. It's about who he entrusted with mission requiring sacrifice of being misunderstood black sheep, painful family isolation, and responsibility of creating completely new legacy future generations will inherit. So stop comparing yourself with siblings who seem to have family approval denied to you. They have what they have because they weren't called to carry what you were called to carry. Being black sheep among siblings isn't curse. It's mark of divine separation, distinguishing you for purpose going beyond family approval. While your siblings fit perfectly into family dynamic, follow expectations without questioning, perpetuate generational patterns automatically, you were always the one who didn't conform, who asked why, when everyone just accepted, who felt visceral discomfort with toxic traditions family normalized. This feeling of never completely belonging didn't happen because something's wrong with you. It happened because God intentionally separated you, marked you as different, chose you to break cycles your siblings will keep repeating because they don't have spiritual discernment necessary to recognize they're trapped. Your siblings probably receive approval denied to you because they don't threaten family status quo. They marry who family approves, choose careers making sense to generational mentality, raise children repeating exactly the same mistakes committed with you. And family celebrates this as success because continuity is comfortable, predictability is safe, conformity doesn't require anyone to change. But you, as chosen one, represent complete rupture with this pattern, and rupture is always seen as betrayal by those invested in keeping system functioning. That's why you're black sheep. Not because you failed to fit in, but because you refused to conform to mold that would kill your divine purpose before it manifested. The family isolation you experience as black sheep is temporary but necessary. God emotionally distanced you from siblings and extended family because excessive proximity to those who don't understand your mission would compromise your spiritual development. You can't break generational curses if you're still emotionally entangled with those perpetuating them. Can't create new legacy if you're trapped trying to win validation from those who want you exactly like they are, mediocre, conforming, spiritually asleep. So embrace black sheep identity not with shame, but with honor, recognizing that being different from siblings who chose easy path of family acceptance is confirmation you were chosen for difficult but eternally significant path of generational transformation. There's spiritual hierarchy within families that has nothing to do with birth order, intelligence, or natural talents. It's divine ordination designating specific roles based on eternal purpose, not temporal merit. God looks at family lineage and identifies through which member he'll channel generational transformation, curse-breaking, new legacy establishment. In your family, that member is you, not because you asked, not because you were more prepared, but because God saw something in your soul's composition, making you appropriate vessel for mission your siblings simply weren't molded to carry. This spiritual hierarchy explains why you feel weight of responsibility they don't feel, holy restlessness they don't experience, calling they don't hear even when you grew up literally in the same environment. In the Bible, this pattern repeats consistently. Isaac was chosen over Ishmael, Jacob over Esau, Joseph over his 10 older brothers, David over 7 apparently more qualified brothers. In each case, divine choice completely ignored human logic of birthright, physical strength, or social approval. God chose based on vision only he had about who could fulfill specific purpose beyond siblings' capacity. Doesn't mean unchosen siblings were bad or rejected. Means they had different functions within larger plan, functions not requiring the type of painful refinement, necessary isolation, or radical separation characterizing the chosen one's journey. Understanding spiritual hierarchy frees you from 2 dangerous traps: arrogance of thinking you're better than your siblings, and envy of wanting their apparently easier life. You're not superior. You're separated for purpose coming with price they wouldn't be willing to pay. They're not inferior. They simply weren't called to break what you were called to break, build what you were designated to build. Accept your position in family spiritual hierarchy not with pride, but with humility. Recognizing that being chosen among siblings means you'll carry burdens they'll never understand, face battles they don't even know exist, and create legacy future generations will inherit while they perpetuate patterns that will die with them. The specific reason God chose you among your siblings will shock you by its simplicity. He saw you had unique capacity to be completely broken and still not give up. Your siblings may be stronger emotionally in conventional sense, more psychologically stable, more socially successful, but you have something they don't have, which is spiritual resilience to traverse refining furnaces that would destroy them. God doesn't choose the most qualified by human standards. He chooses those who can be molded through extreme pressure until they become exactly what He needs for a specific mission. And when He looked at your family, He identified in you a soul that could be crushed under weight of divine purpose and emerge transformed instead of destroyed. Another reason is you carry spiritual sensitivity your siblings haven't developed, and this sensitivity, though painful, is essential for discernment necessary to break generational curses. You feel the weight of toxic family patterns in ways they don't feel because they're anesthetized by normalization. You perceive dysfunctions they comfortably ignore. You question traditions they blindly accept. This sharpened consciousness that made you always feel displaced among siblings is exactly what qualifies you to be the one who finally says, "No, this cycle ends with me." God gave you eyes to see what needs to be broken and courage to break it, even when no one in family understands or supports. The third reason is He specifically trusted you to carry family isolation coming with being chosen without becoming bitter or vengeful. Your siblings may have closer family ties, approval denied to you, acceptance you never experienced, but they don't have spiritual fortitude to endure family rejection and still forgive, love from distance, honor boundaries without holding grudges. God chose you knowing you'd suffer painful isolation, but wouldn't use it as excuse to perpetuate more pain. That you'd be black sheep, but wouldn't become vengeful wolf. That you'd create new legacy not from hatred of old, but from love for what can still be redeemed from ashes of what was broken. If you've always felt you're fundamentally different from your siblings, not just in personality or interests, but at soul level, as if you operate on completely distinct frequencies, this isn't imagination or psychological complex. It's spiritual confirmation you were separated for purpose, going beyond common family dynamic. While your siblings seem satisfied with superficial life focused on appearances, material achievements, and status quo maintenance, you feel spiritual hunger nothing temporal can satisfy. Seek deep meaning they don't even question the absence of. Carry weight of generational responsibility they don't feel because they weren't designated to carry it. This difference isn't your defect. It's divine design marking you as chosen before you even understood what that means. The difference manifests in specific, observable areas. You question everything they automatically accept. Feel visceral discomfort with family dynamics they navigate comfortably. Have dreams and visions going beyond common ambitions satisfying your siblings. They may think you're too complicated, too sensitive, too spiritual, but in truth you simply operate in dimension they haven't accessed yet and maybe never will because it's not part of their divine purpose. You were equipped with discernment, detecting generational curses they unconsciously perpetuate. Sensitivity capturing dysfunctions they've completely normalized. Courage to break with patterns they don't even have desire to examine, let alone break. This difference also explains why relationship with siblings always seems superficial even when you try genuine connection. You can't talk about trivialities anymore when your soul is processing existential questions. They can't follow spiritual conversations essential to you, but too abstract for them. It's not that you love less or they're incapable. It's that you were called to radically different journeys within the same family lineage. They were designated for continuity. You were chosen for rupture. They'll perpetuate, you'll transform. And accepting this difference as divine separation instead of fighting it, trying to force proximity no longer possible or necessary, is first step to honoring both your calling and their place in larger plan, transcending both your comprehensions. The spiritual truth definitively answering why God chose you instead of your siblings is rooted in divine sovereignty, needing no justification to human logic. Just as potter has right to make from same clay vessels for honor and vessels for common use, God has right to choose within same family who will carry special anointing and who will live ordinary life. And this choice isn't injustice. It's expression of divine will operating with wisdom beyond temporal comprehension. He chose you not because your siblings are less loved, but because the specific purpose he planted in family lineage requires someone willing to pay price of isolation, rejection, and radical transformation they simply weren't molded to endure. God also chose you because he saw in you capacity to carry spiritual revelation without being corrupted by arrogance. Many who receive consciousness of being chosen fall into superiority trap, start despising family as less spiritual, use separation as excuse for toxic spiritual pride. But God identified in you paradoxical humility of knowing you're chosen, while simultaneously recognizing this doesn't make you better, just different in function. Your siblings may not have spiritual discernment you have, but they have their own gifts and purposes equally valid within larger plan. And you were chosen partially because God trusted you to honor this distinction without falling into judgment or disdain. The final truth is God chose you instead of your siblings because you were willing, though unconsciously, to be misunderstood, rejected, and isolated by your own family if necessary to fulfill divine purpose. Your siblings need family approval, depend on parental and relative validation, build identity around acceptance within established dynamic. But you, from the beginning, demonstrated willingness to be black sheep if necessary, to break with expectations if they contradicted internal calling, to choose spiritual truth over relational comfort. This rare willingness to sacrifice family acceptance on altar of divine obedience is exactly what qualified you to be chosen, because the mission God has for you will require exactly this type of courage repeatedly, and he needed someone who already demonstrated capacity to pay this price. Your family, including your siblings, will never fully understand why you're so different because they don't have access to spiritual dimension where your true identity operates. They see you through lenses limited by shared childhood experience, memories of who you were before spiritual awakening, and mainly through projections of who they need you to be to maintain comfortable family dynamic. But who you really are now, chosen one breaking generational curses, divine purpose bearer, new legacy creator, simply doesn't fit mental categories they have available to comprehend you. It's like trying to explain color to someone born blind. It's not their ill will. It's genuine perspective limitation only their own spiritual expansion could overcome. Your siblings specifically don't understand because you grew up in same environment but had radically different spiritual journeys. They look at same family history and don't see destructive patterns you clearly identify, participate in same traditions causing you deep discomfort, and feel nothing but normalcy. Hear same generational stories that to you reveal obvious curses, but to them are just the way things have always been. This spiritual blindness isn't stupidity. It's simply that they weren't equipped with discernment God gave you, didn't go through refinement that opened your eyes, don't carry responsibility of seeing what needs to be transformed because they weren't called to be transformers. And here's the liberating truth. You don't need them to understand to validate your calling. Sibling or extended family approval isn't prerequisite for fulfilling divine purpose. Often it's exactly the opposite, where lack of family understanding confirms you really were separated for something beyond their comprehension. Stop wasting energy trying to explain spiritual experiences to those without context to receive them. Stop seeking validation from siblings who'll never give it, because they genuinely can't see what you see. Accept that being different means being misunderstood, and family misunderstanding doesn't invalidate your journey. It just confirms you're walking on spiritual ground they weren't called to explore with you. This persistent feeling of being different from your siblings isn't something to ignore, suppress, or try to normalize. It's divine calling whispering you were separated for purpose they weren't designated to fulfill. Many chosen ones spend years trying to fit into sibling dynamic, forcing proximity that doesn't flow naturally, pretending to agree with values they internally reject, all to avoid accepting the painful truth they were made fundamentally different. But ignoring this feeling is wasting the only clear indicator God gave you that your journey will radically diverge from your siblings' trajectory. And the sooner you accept this reality instead of fighting it, the faster you can start fulfilling the specific purpose justifying all the difference. Not ignoring means actively honoring the separation you feel, establishing healthy boundaries even when family accuses you of distancing, following spiritual convictions even when siblings ridicule you, investing in personal and spiritual growth even when they criticize you for thinking you're better than everyone. It means stopping apologizing for having evolved beyond mentality they still operate in, stopping diminishing your spiritual achievements to not offend their mediocrity, stopping hiding your growth to maintain false family harmony that's actually conformity in disguise. Each time you ignore the feeling of difference and force fit that isn't real, you betray the divine purpose that separated you precisely to be different, to break patterns, to create something new siblings trapped in continuity will never create. Honoring the difference also means recognizing that family isolation you experience isn't relationship failure. It's God's strategic positioning distancing you from influences that would dilute your spiritual effectiveness. You can't break generational curses if you're still emotionally entangled with siblings unconsciously perpetuating them. Can't create radically new legacy if you're constantly being pulled back to old dynamic through family obligations draining your energy. So stop ignoring what your soul has been telling you for years. You're different from your siblings because you were chosen for different mission, and accepting this truth with courage instead of resisting with guilt is essential first step to finally living fully in purpose, justifying all the painful separation you experienced. You were the only chosen one in the family because the generational purpose God planted in your lineage requires concentration of spiritual anointing in single vessel instead of diluted distribution among multiple. Think this way. When God wants radical transformation of family trajectory, He doesn't spread power equally among all members hoping they collectively do something. He strategically chooses one member, concentrates in them discernment, courage, necessary spiritual resistance, and uses this individual as rupture point, breaking curses and establishing new legacy future generations will inherit. In your family, that rupture point is you, not because other members are disposable, but because their role is different, and your specific role requires isolation and differentiation that wouldn't work if multiple siblings had same calling. The specific generational purpose you carry is breaking patterns repeating for decades or even centuries in your lineage. Addictions passing from father to son, scarcity mentalities keeping family financially trapped, dysfunctional relationships each generation replicates, unprocessed traumas inherited as automatic curses. Your siblings will continue these cycles not because they're bad, but because they weren't equipped with vision to see they're trapped or courage to break even when they notice. But you, as chosen one, received both consciousness of patterns and spiritual authority to declare them terminated. And when you break these curses through radically different choices, healing you actively seek, boundaries you establish without guilt, you're not just transforming your own life. You're releasing future generations who will be born into lineage already purified of what before seemed inevitable. Being sole chosen one also means you'll carry specific loneliness of not having siblings who understand or share the journey. But this loneliness is temporary and necessary. God isolated you from siblings to ensure your transformation is complete and not compromised by family loyalties that would make you hesitate when you need to make radical choices. But after you establish new legacy, after you break curses and create solid foundation, future generations of your own family, children, nieces, nephews, grandchildren, will inherit what you conquered through years of painful isolation, and they'll have advantage of starting already free from what you had to fight to break. So being sole chosen one isn't permanent punishment. It's temporary sacrifice producing eternal fruit going far beyond your own life. The main reason God chose you among your siblings is this. You were specifically designated to be breaker of generational curses, keeping your family lineage trapped for decades or even centuries, while your siblings unconsciously perpetuate destructive patterns. Dysfunctional marriages replicating exactly what they witnessed in parents, victim mentalities passing generation to generation, addictions appearing cyclically, unprocessed traumas inherited as automatic baggage. You were equipped with discernment to identify these curses and spiritual authority to declare them terminated. It's not easy or popular task. Family usually attacks whoever tries to break patterns they normalized. But you weren't chosen to be popular. You were chosen to be liberator. Breaking generational curses first requires you recognize specific patterns repeating in your family. Sit and document. Addictions appearing generation after generation, alcoholism, chemical dependency, compulsions, destructive relational patterns, betrayal, abandonment, emotional abuse, limiting mentalities, poverty, victimization, fear of success, specific traumas passed without processing, rejection, shame, unworthiness. Your siblings look at same family history and say, "This is how we are. It's always been this way." You look and say, "This ends with me, here and now." This difference in response is exactly what qualifies you as curse breaker. You refuse to accept inevitability of what can and should be transformed. The act of breaking curses is simultaneously spiritual and practical. Spiritually, you declare in prayer authority over generational patterns, renounce agreements previous generations made, consciously or unconsciously, and establish new patterns based on biblical truths instead of family traditions. Practically, you make radically different choices. Seek therapy when family says, "We don't need that." Establish healthy boundaries when family accuses you of distancing. Choose partner based on spiritual health instead of just family approval. Raise children with consciousness instead of automatic repetition. Each conscious choice different from pattern is brick building new legacy. And when you die, your descendants will inherit lineage purified of curses that before seemed eternal but ended because one chosen one had courage to be different from all siblings who chose conformity over transformation. So now tell me with total honesty, after discovering God chose you among your siblings not by favoritism, but for specific generational purpose, that your difference isn't defect but divine separation, that being black sheep is confirmation of calling to break curses they'll perpetuate, will you still waste energy trying to win family approval never necessary to validate your calling? Will you keep forcing proximity with siblings operating on completely different frequency? Or will you finally honor family isolation as God's strategic positioning preparing you for mission they weren't equipped to share? Look at your family journey with renewed eyes. Each moment of sibling rejection was freeing you from conformity that would kill your purpose. Each time they excluded you was creating necessary space for your spiritual development without interference. Each criticism that hurt was confirming you're really breaking with patterns they still embrace. You weren't chosen because you're better than your siblings. You were chosen because God specifically trusted you with responsibility of breaking generational curses, creating new legacy, and establishing foundation future generations will inherit already purified of what you had to fight to transform. This is immense honor and sacred weight, completely explaining why you've always been different. If this message resonated deeply with you, if it finally makes sense why you never fit among siblings, if you're ready to stop seeking family validation and start fully honoring the purpose that separated you, then don't keep this to yourself. Subscribe to the channel because we're going to continue exploring the chosen one's journey within complex family dynamics, with content equipping you to thrive even without sibling support. Leave in the comments what city you're watching from, and if you're also the only chosen one among your siblings, I want to know where the curse breakers are who finally understood why they were separated. And turn on notification bells because each video might bring liberation. You need to finally embrace your chosen identity without guilt for being different. Remember, you weren't rejected, you were selected. There's a huge difference, and now you know what it is. See you in the next video.